Chapter 13, New Laws, 1945 to 1960. After the Harlem Renaissance and his own awakening, after the United States had entered into and emerged from World War II, Du Bois attended the Fifth Pan-African Congress. Pan-Africanism is a movement that encourages unity among all people of African descent, strength in numbers, global power. At this Fifth Pan-African Congress, members discussed the collective experiences of African descendants and the independence of African countries under European colonial control, Africans governing themselves. Because of his work on behalf of Black people and African nations, Du Bois became known as the father of Pan-Africanism. During this time, America rose as a global leader. The words of the national anthem proudly proclaimed America's greatness, the land of the free, home of the brave. But who was brave enough to admit the truth about racism? A better question is, what did freedom really mean? Freedom for whom? So far, the answers had been freedom that was free for white people and a fractured kind of freedom for Black people. Lawyers were battling in court to address questions about freedom and equality. Some of these cases went to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, where judges have the final say on American laws. One case was about where Black people were allowed to buy homes. It exposed that in northern cities, white people were stopping Black people from living where they wanted to live. White people kept Black people from buying houses in, quote, their neighborhoods. The Supreme Court ruled that creating segregated neighborhoods was against the law, which made white people mad. So mad that as Black people moved into, quote, their neighborhoods, they packed up and left, finding new ways to keep neighborhoods segregated. Let's pause. Back then, the Supreme Court ruled that housing segregation and segregated schools were against the law. And yet, today, segregated neighborhoods and schools still exist all over the country. There are still all-white, or almost all-white, neighborhoods and schools. There are still all-Black, or almost all-Black, or non-white neighborhoods and schools. Remember that racism was stamped into America's design, and even though there have been additions and changes to many racist laws, racism still exists. Unpause. Another case was about segregated schools in the South. Black students attended schools that were under-resourced. There wasn't enough money to build or maintain schools, school buses, and for materials, such as books, desks, and chairs. White students went to schools that were well-resourced. Their schools were spacious and well-maintained, and there was enough money for school buses and supplies. The Supreme Court ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, against the law. But a racist idea was part of this ruling. It was decided that Black students would integrate into white schools. But white students did not have to integrate into Black schools. This reinforced the racist idea that white people are superior, that for Black kids to succeed, they needed to be around white kids. Either way, this also made white people mad. So mad that when Black students showed up at, quote, their schools, mobs of white people showed up too. So mad they screamed, called Black students horrible names, spat on them, and threatened their lives, whether they were high school students or first graders like Ruby Bridges. So mad that 6-year-old Ruby had to be escorted to school each day by federal marshals who protected her from the mobs of angry white people she had to pass to enter the building. So mad that white parents refused to let their children be in the same class with Ruby, or eat lunch with her, or play with her at recess. Ruby was taught in a classroom alone while federal marshals guarded the door. See, laws alone are not powerful enough to create freedom for all. For freedom to exist for everyone, it takes people to fight for the right laws that benefit all people and make sure those laws are followed.